The Conclave of Seven Suns had spent 11 months and 400 billion credits hunting Kael Veyron. They had deployed drone fleets across 47 star systems. They had bribed dockworkers on Thessalon Prime. They had posted his biometric signature on every orbital station between the outer rim and the core clusters. The reward, enough wealth to buy a moon, had gone unclaimed for 312 days. And then Mara Ellison walked into a noodle shop on Duskport Station and recognized him between bites of her lunch. She almost missed it. The man was sitting in the corner booth, hood pulled low, shoulders hunched in that universal posture of someone trying very hard not to exist. He had changed the color of his hair, darker now, almost black, and grown a beard that didn't quite suit his jaw. He was eating something pale and gelatinous that the Vethani called comfort food and humans called absolutely not. Mara chewed her noodles slowly. She was off duty. Technically. She was wearing civilian clothes, a worn jacket, cargo pants, boots that had seen better decades. Her badge was in her bag. Her sidearm was under her jacket, because she was human and therefore never actually off duty. She looked at the man in the corner booth. She looked at the scar running along the left side of his jaw, a curved thing, too clean to be an accident, too old to be recent. She had seen that scar in a file photograph 11 months ago, in a briefing room on New Geneva Station, when the Conclave had formally requested human Death World investigator assistance in apprehending their most wanted fugitive. Kael Veyron, former admiral of the 3rd Conclave Fleet. Accused of stealing 40 classified warship schematics and selling them to the Myriad Collective, an alliance of species who had, for the past decade, been very quietly and very patiently building toward a war that would rearrange the galaxy. He glanced up. Their eyes met for exactly 1 second. Mara took another bite of her noodles. Kael Veyron looked back down at his food. He had made a critical error that most non-human fugitives made when trying to hide from humans. He had underestimated the species' ability to appear completely unbothered while doing something very bothered indeed. Mara Ellison had grown up in the mining colonies of Kepler Deep, a Death World designation Class 3, which meant the atmosphere was breathable but technically trying to kill you at all times. She had learned to read a room the way most people learn to breathe. She had spent 8 years as an investigator in the most dangerous criminal jurisdiction in the Conclave's territory. She had once talked a Crethean warlord into surrendering by calmly eating a sandwich in front of him for 40 minutes while his fortress burned. She was not going to be rattled by a wanted man eating Vethani comfort jelly 6 meters away. She finished her noodles. She paid the bill. She walked out of the noodle shop, turned left, walked exactly 12 steps, and sent a Priority 1 encrypted signal to Conclave Central Command. Veyron is on Duskport. Booth 7, Nonley's Noodle House, Level 4, Sector Crimson. He's eating. Give me 20 minutes before you send anyone. If you send anyone before I say so, he runs and you lose him again. The response came back in 40 seconds. Investigator Ellison, you are formally authorized. Conclave Retrieval Fleet en route. ETA 90 minutes. Please advise on subject status. Mara looked back at the noodle shop door. Subject is eating, she typed back. So am I. She went back inside and ordered dessert. The thing about Kael Veyron, the thing that made him dangerous enough to warrant a galaxy-wide manhunt, was that he was brilliant. Not human brilliant, which was already a category that made most species nervous, but the specific brand of brilliant that crossed species lines. The kind that could look at a tactical situation from 17 angles simultaneously and find the exit that nobody else saw. He had been watching Mara since she walked in. He had clocked her posture, the way she sat with her back to a wall, facing the door. He had noticed her eyes moving in that particular pattern that meant someone was cataloging the room rather than experiencing it. He had noticed the slight bulge under her left arm where a weapon sat in a holster designed to be invisible to non-human visual spectrums. He had noticed, most importantly, that she was human. There were about 12 humans on Duskport Station at any given time. This was not a human-frequented place. This was a mid-range trade hub that existed primarily because it sat at a convenient refueling distance between three larger systems, and convenience was not something humans traditionally valued over comfort. When she had looked at him, he had felt the exact sensation his old tactical AI used to label threat vector confirmed. When she had looked away and kept eating, he had felt something worse, unknown variable in play. Non-humans, when they spotted a fugitive, did one of two things. They reacted visibly, giving Kale time to run. Or they reached for communication devices, which he was trained to spot. Mara Ellison had done neither. She had eaten her noodles. She had looked faintly bored. Kale had run from conclave fleets. He had slipped through quantum-locked security cordons. He had bribed, negotiated, disguised, and outmaneuvered his way across 40 star systems for 11 months. He did not know what to do with a human who was just eating lunch. He stayed in his booth, because leaving suddenly was exactly what she might be waiting for. He calculated vectors. He identified exits, 3 in this room, 1 maintenance corridor accessible through the kitchen, 1 ventilation shaft above the serving counter that he had noted upon arrival out of habit. He watched her pay, leave, and turn left. He gave it 4 seconds, then stood to go right. She walked back in and sat down at the counter with a cup of something that steamed yellow. Their eyes met again. This time, Mara Ellison smiled at him. It was a small smile. Polite. The kind of smile that said, "We both know what's happening here and I want you to understand that I am not afraid of you." Kale sat back down. He understood, in that moment, why humans had such an outsized reputation in the galaxy. It wasn't their physical durability, though that helped. It wasn't their adaptability or their creativity or their baffling willingness to run toward dangerous things. It was this particular talent for making you feel like the ground was stable while they were busy removing it from under your feet, and they were doing it calmly, over dessert, and they were enjoying it. He was still sitting there when the conclave agents arrived 18 minutes later. He hadn't run. He told himself it was because she had clearly sealed the exits. Conclave authorization moved fast when a human investigator flagged a priority 1. He told himself there had been no viable escape vector. He did not tell himself that some part of him had simply been too unnerved to move. Mara met the lead conclave agent, a tall Theshan named Commander Orith, at the door. She handed him a data chip without looking up from her cup. "Biometrics, current appearance documentation, and a note that he's been cooperative," she said. "Don't rough him up. He knows things you want to know, and people stop talking when they're in pain." Commander Orith stared at her. "You've been sitting here with him for 18 minutes. "Yes." She finally looked up. "He didn't run. That's worth something." She paused. "Also, your retrieval team took 90 minutes to arrive at a priority 1 call. I'm going to put that in my report." Orith opened his mouth. Closed it. Across the noodle shop, 2 conclave agents were placing restraint cuffs on Kale Veyron, who was going quietly, his eyes fixed on the human woman at the counter with an expression that species translators would have struggled to render but that humans would have recognized immediately. It was respect. The grudging, bewildered, slightly offended kind. Mara finished her dessert, left a generous tip, and walked out into the corridor of Duskport Station. Her calm chirped. "Central Command. Excellent work, investigator. Retrieval is confirmed. The Conclave extends its formal gratitude to the Human Death World Division." She typed back with one hand, already scanning the next level for a coffee substitute that wouldn't make her regret it. "Tell the Conclave they're welcome. Also, tell them to work on their response times." She pocketed her calm. Somewhere behind her, in a noodle shop on level 4, a galaxy-wide manhunt concluded over an empty bowl of vet honey comfort jelly. She had a report to file. She found the coffee first. Humans, other species would later agree, were most dangerous not when they were angry, but when they were calm. When they were eating. When they were smiling that small, polite smile that meant they had already won and were simply waiting for you to figure it out. The conclave updated its training materials accordingly. It didn't really help.